They arrived at the imposing structure of the Demon Martial Alliance, known infamously as the Demon Hall. The crowd buzzed with excitement, acknowledging the Demon Hall's lenient approach to talent scouting. The crowd stared as Bu Yunsul, the young mortician, approached the gathered assembly. A knowing smirk broke through the tension as one man chided the other for his hasty assumptions. The young mortician, Bu Yunsul, stares ahead, the darkness of his grandfather's profession shadowing his face. The young Bu Yunsul, burdened by his grandfather's legacy, looked up with grim determination. A raw, choked cry escapes him as his world shatters once more. It begins now. The young boy, now known as Bu Yunsul, was saved from abandonment in the snow. The child, Bu Yunsul, points out a critical detail about the body's musculature. The grandfather confirms her keen observation. The observer's sharp eye discerned the signature physical trait linked to the heaven-cutting sword technique. The promise of the robe and sword was the bait, forcing the young mortician to endure the cruel corpse game. The joyful sound of his laugh faded as the grandfather prepared for the deadly game. The cold morning light barely pierced the sparse room where his grandfather lay still. The scene shifts, moving away from the terrible aftermath, settling briefly in a quiet, moonlit bamboo grove. The elder's gaze, sharp even through the mist, suggests a deep, troubled awareness. Even in this dire moment, his spirit clung to ancient wisdom. Grandfather smiles gently, placing a hand on Seol's shoulder, breaking the preceding tension. His grandfather's words still echoed, a promise that had become a cruel jest. The grandfather's warm, familiar smile was the last comfort Bu Yunsul would know. The promise of a grand reward hinged on enduring this grueling corpse game until dawn. A sudden surge of power erupts as the enraged Bu Yunsul grips his sword tighter. A sinister figure emerges, the menacing Bu Jianyang, known as the Seven-Bladed Demon. But now, the only path remaining was the cold, burning road of vengeance. The masked figure's challenge hung in the air, immediately drawing a response from the seasoned warrior. The intimidating figure pressed the accusation, referencing the ultimate position this martial artist had forsaken. The clash erupts in a blinding, furious discharge of raw demonic power. The very air seemed to split under the force of that final, devastating strike. His final plea was not for survival, but for atonement in the face of impending death. The investigators noted the grotesque wounds, signs pointing toward a specific, powerful, and poisonous technique. Bu Jianyang concedes the fight, acknowledging the horrific cost of their battle. The terrible signs of poisoning and demonic technique were undeniable, pointing toward a rare, deadly master. Struck by overwhelming grief, Bu Yunsul cried out, collapsing within the grim confines of the casket. Desperate, he clung to the hope of his grandfather's return, only to be met with chilling silence. The agonizing pain forced a desperate, soundless cry from his lips. As the young mortician stood amidst the desolate aftermath, his grandfather's final wishes echoed in his heart. The moment of realization strikes, a sharp, agonizing shock echoing the chaos around him. The seven-bladed demon, Bu Jianyang, was known for forcing his enemies into brutal confrontations. The young Bu Yunsul could only gasp, witnessing the horrific scene unfold before her. The brutal fight ended, leaving behind only the chilling aftermath and the scent of fresh blood. The plea was raw, echoing the terror of hearing those final, desperate words from her grandfather. The horrifying injuries revealed the mastery of the attacker's grotesque technique. The world dissolved into a horrifying, agonizing reality as the attack struck home. The young mortician's pleas were met with his grandfather's final, fading acknowledgement of his name. Blood streamed down his face, a final, horrific sign of the battle fought to protect his grandson. The shock of his final words, "Never seek revenge," drove agonizing tears down his face. The raw, uncontrolled fury of grief erupts, sealing his fate. Desperate, the boy declared he would choose the afterlife over this cruel world without his grandfather. The overwhelming agony of his grandfather's final moments stained the air with grief. The world dissolved into agonizing clarity as the lifeblood streamed from his eyes. The brutal realization crashes down, turning the world silent as Ciel whispers the devastating question. The weight of her grandfather's final wishes, a life free from vengeance, crashed down, mingling with the stark reality of the blood on her hands. The world fractured then, the weight of his final wishes crushing down. The horror of his grandfather's final moments settled over Bu Yunsel like a suffocating shroud. The weight of his final pleas settled in the cold air, Bu Yunsel realizing the depth of his grandfather's sacrifice. But as the light faded, something dark and terrifying began to awaken within Ciel. The upward sword stroke struck with savage finality, a technique seemingly beyond a simple swordsman. The horrific reality of the wounds continued to reveal itself. The upward striking sword stroke continued its deadly path, ending with a final, horrific penetration. The grotesque wounds and specialized poison confirmed the horrifying truth. The investigator noted the extensive damage, far exceeding the capabilities of a simple accomplice. The chilling realization dawns. These grotesque wounds are signs of lethal poisoning. The gruesome wounds clearly indicated a mastery of the heavenly yoga art, confirming the presence of a dangerous foe. The investigators recognized the grotesque signature of a horrifying, demonic martial artist. The final, peaceful breaths slipped away as Ciel held him. His grandfather was finally at rest. The world fades to white as Bu Yunxiel's resolve hardens. He will definitely find them. The moment of impact, a single, suspended drop, signaling the end of their peaceful study. Ignoring the lingering suspicion, Bu Yunsel focused solely on the task at hand, registering his intention. The grandfather, now injured, urged his grandson away from his profession. They instantly recognized the gruesome signature of the rotten flesh decayed blood toxins. The crimson anger burns in his eyes as he forces the needle against his own lip, tasting his own blood. The observers recognized the signature of the heaven-cutting sword technique. The attacker's boot presses down, stained with the evidence of his brutal victory. The final, irrevocable mark of commitment, sealed not just with ink, but with blood. The observer's hardened gaze locked onto the grotesque evidence, his breath catching at the realization. This resolve, born from tragedy, would be his first step toward fulfilling his sworn path. The ancient struggle between the orthodox and unorthodox sects of the Miram continues to rage. The orthodox sects were determined to advance their power, leading to a new creation. The imposing structure of the demon palace looms against the ominous sky, a testament to their rising power. The crowd of hopeful prodigies gathered, awaiting the official start of the daunting selection process. Among these assembled hopefuls, a few stood out, catching the sharp eye of the observer. The young aspirant observed the powerful figures, their silent judgment palpable in the air. The protagonist stares, resolving that the one who felled his grandfather must be pursued. Driven by the need for vengeance against that formidable master, he resolved to achieve equal strength. The sudden shift to a trial of survival shocked the remaining candidates into stunned silence. The imposing head instructor, Hyok Ryong, unleashes his fearsome presence. The arrival of the head instructor shocks the assembled crowd, confirming his legendary status. The elder's furious gaze confirmed their utter disdain for any perceived weakness. The assembled hopefuls absorbed the weight of the trials ahead, realizing the path to becoming a demon master was steep. The imposing figures announced the first evaluation, a test of sheer physical capacity. The shock of the announced second trial instantly registers on the faces of the gathered hopefuls. The initial shock of the second trial gives way to immediate, brutal action. The judging official stared down, his gaze intense beneath the wide brim of his hat. After barely passing the physical inspection, the next instructions are immediately delivered. The seasoned martial artist regards the newcomer, a silence pregnant with unspoken judgment passing between them. The official directs the young prodigy forward, confirming his passage to the next stage. The elder spectator recoils, overwhelmed by the latent potential emanating from the young candidate. Witnessing the raw physical inspection, one onlooker already judged the protagonist's fate. That one participant's mere presence caused another to feel such deep shock. The shocking reality of the second trial, survival by killing, ignited something dark within him. The weight of the realization, that he might not survive this brutal, unexpected second trial, drew a single bead of sweat. The evaluator clears his throat, his eyes fixed on the desperate youth. Despite the low expectations, he could not allow him to proceed. Even among these prodigies, she felt the weight of a truly formidable martial master. The young protagonist despaired, feeling utterly unqualified for this martial contest. However, this sudden shift hints at the ruthless nature of the subsequent challenge. The unsuccessful aspirant's disbelief hangs heavy as the massive gate of the trials looms. His immediate failure at the physical test fueled a desperate outburst against the selection process. The imposing elder awaits the young candidate's response. Holding the ledger of judgment, the presiding elder shows no mercy in his rebuttal to the complaints. The instructor dismisses their complaints, emphasizing that physical aptitude remains paramount for martial study. Beneath the shock of the sudden, brutal second trial, a fierce determination ignites in his glowing eyes. The first trial ends in disappointment, but the master reveals the true path forward in the second trial. The administrator silenced the murmurs, declaring the second trial would commence immediately. The terrifying command rings out: fight each other and survive. The second trial was unveiled with a chilling decree: survive until only one remained. The sheer intensity of the situation gripped them both, a palpable dread settling in. The first trial ended, but this challenger saw a dark opportunity in the next one. This new trial, however deadly, presents an unexpected opportunity for him. His fiery, red-tinged gaze locks onto the successful candidates, fueled by simmering resentment. The young man's desperate grip tightened, perhaps clinging to a single sliver of hope as the second trial began. The tension snaps as an unknown challenger swings a massive, glowing pulley arm down. The brutal command rings out, followed by a terrifying strike aimed directly at the stunned youth. The brutal impact echoes as the blade finds its mark, signaling a shift in the bloody contest. The weapon drives forward with terrifying momentum, closing the distance in an instant. The lethal strike connects with blinding speed, ripping through the air with savage finality. The confident young swordsman lunged forward, eyes blazing with maniacal intent. The raw, untamed power of the red dragon erupted, a terrifying spectacle soaked in gore. The brutal aftermath of the strike is immediately apparent, splattering blood across the terrified onlooker. The swift, decisive strike found its mark, leaving this challenger staring at the ceiling, already tasting the end. The chilling analysis of the fatal blow confirms the sheer lethality of the attack. His successful strike fueled a manic challenge, daring any remaining fool to face his blade. The imposing figure grimly affirms his disdain for the panicked survivors. The young swordsman, suddenly confronted by his rival's strength, froze in stark, wide-eyed disbelief. The survivor, paralyzed by the grim reality, wonders what desperate move to make next. The sudden, brutal strike elicits a final, desperate scream from the victim. The strongest among them, the one possessing the extermination sword, was now known. The raw violence unleashed shattered the composure of the less experienced fighters. The raw terror of the slaughter was too much for this one to bear, their hands clutching their head in a desperate denial. Their own fear of imminent death paralyzes their senses, leaving them wide open to attack. The elder watches intently, his narrowed eye burning with recognition. He has noted the strongest contender. The elder watches, his crimson eye glinting with calculation, while the younger man observes from the shadows. The victor's chilling smile suggests he recognizes the ultimate threat among the survivors. Observing the remaining survivors, he notes that not all of them have succumbed to panic. The close quarters battle erupts into a bloody frenzy, showing the terrifying reality of the struggle. The final, desperate struggle ends in a brutal, messy display of violence. This cold assessment of the disciples' potential solidifies a dangerous realization. Their minds fractured by terror, the crowd succumbs to the primal fear of death. The grim realization dawns. The true objective is survival, not mere slaughter. The victor, still processing the swift ending, pauses before the dying man's outstretched hand. The chilling certainty of his survival vow settled over the scene of death. The violent clash explodes into motion, a blur of chains and desperate combatants. Surveying the carnage, the chain-wielding warrior pauses, noticing the figure still standing amidst the fallen. The young disciple's expression hardened, the stark realization of his opponent's strength hitting him. The shock of the silent swordplay fades as a new, manic challenger emerges. The brutal finality of the attack slams into the ground, marked by a fresh pool of blood. The flail descends with monstrous force, splintering the air around it. The sound of impact echoes as another challenger collapses onto the dusty ground. The young man mocks the previous victor's small box, questioning his strange demeanor. The victor, shrouded and low, examines the silent casualty of his decisive action. He pulls back the wrapping, exposing what lies beneath the makeshift offering. Despite the grim reality of the fight, an unexpected, personal message surfaces. The menacing figure looms large, its crimson eyes burning with dark intent. Despite his panicked expression, the chained man's hidden assailant smiles, fueled by malice. The blinding flash resolves, revealing the swift, fatal precision of the strike. With the immediate threat eliminated, the enigmatic swordsman steps forward, holding his strange, glowing blade. The victor approaches the silent survivor, his presence demanding a response. The masked man, having assessed the weakness of the strongest contender, now reveals his sharp, unsettling grin. With a chillingly casual boast, he reaffirms his lethal capabilities against his bleeding victim. This individual, the sole disciple of Black Soul, is deemed the strongest remaining candidate. This weathered figure, observing the carnage, already perceived the true threat. The narrative shifts to the legend surrounding the extermination sword's wielder. The young master lunged, his eyes burning with intent, directly at the old master. That last encounter was just a warm-up. His mania flares now, dripping with fresh victory. The final contender, holding the dreaded extermination sword, assesses the situation. The self-proclaimed strongest, having revealed his plan, now faces a profound moment of shock. Her eyes widen, registering the brutal reality of the scene, the consequence of the strongest surviving. The oppressive sky turns as sharp, echoing sounds fade over the ornate roof structure. Having recognized the deadly weapon, he simply smiles, grasping the bloodied blade. The dust settles over the gruesome tableau, leaving only two figures standing amidst the carnage. Even wounded, this madman defiantly beckons the next challenger. The young disciple, momentarily obscured by the previous chaos, now emerges with a calculating, steady gaze. The masked man's intense gaze confirmed his assessment. He already knew the opponent's fatal flaw. These assembled figures already possess formidable builds, and some faces stir a faint sense of recognition. The smug victor closes in, his expression dripping with satisfied malice. The successful counterattack landed, but the cost was severe. Now, amidst the quiet aftermath, only weariness remains. The victor calmly issues his command, "Disembark." The challenger looks on with utter shock as the tide of battle abruptly turns. The overwhelming crimson surroundings confirm their arrival at the next dreadful stage, the hell path. The air vibrated with an oppressive, fiery energy as the conveyance approached. The master's pronouncement hung heavy, a stark ultimatum guiding the choices ahead. His shocked gaze tracked the movement, the harsh reality of the situation sinking in. The final leg of the journey ends as the boat docks by the jagged coastline. The imposing figure revealed the designated living spaces amidst the harsh landscape. As the others scrambled for comfort, the protagonist stood observing the exchange with quiet intensity. Stepping forward with quiet determination, the protagonist walked past the judging eyes of the others. The initial scramble for comfortable lodging quickly devolves into immediate territorial disputes. While others debated, he observed the casual dismissal of the prime locations. The man offered a humble apology for his harshness, which the woman quickly refuted. The advisor confirms their suspicion that the J checkpoint merely eliminated the weak. The master's sudden, startling presence breaks the tension, freezing the disciple in place. The master regarded him with wary curiosity, recognizing his audacious selection. Having pledged her loyalty, The disciple stood resolute before the imposing master of Nangya Pavilion. The master's stark warning about impending death hung heavy in the fiery air. He pointed decisively, settling on the path he felt was right. Heeding the urgency, the protagonist finally committed to his choice, pointing toward the most unassuming entrance. The Nangya Pavilion master fixed him with an intense, unwavering gaze. A chilling smile crosses the master's face as he finally utters the name of his new, unexpected disciple. The examiner's unsettling smile confirmed the suspicion. This humble choice was truly that of a prodigy. The cave structure was intentionally misleading, designed to deter the casual observer. The Nangya Pavilion master offered a chilling, knowing smirk as the potential disciple waited behind him. The master, in dark robes, observed the trainees' surprising selection. The guide presented the layout of the halls, yet one person seemed unconvinced by the obvious choices. This desolate hellscape harbors 10 specialized martial halls, each teaching a grand master's legacy. The hall master's reaction was immediate, slamming a hand against the ancient, patterned wall. The choice of activity is entirely up to them now. Practice techniques or train alone. The master's stern gaze surveyed the trainee's sudden, respectful bow. The surrounding disciples mock his unusual choice, their laughter echoing in the oppressive atmosphere. Unknown API error after 3 attempts. Despite the grave warning, a resolute, scarred eye confirms the commitment to learn Nangya Pavilion's secret arts. Rejecting the flashiest path, he muses on his true necessity. Drawn toward the unassuming dwellings, the protagonist walked toward their designated lodging. Her gaze lingered, reflecting the stark reality of the master's judgment. He arrived at the chosen refuge, only to question if this humble hut truly served as a martial hall. Despite its decline, Nangya Pavilion remains significant for its history of producing legends. He makes his final decision, determined to stay and pursue the Nangya Pavilion arts. The master's harsh assessment hangs in the fiery air, demanding a response. Did you truly seek to ascend to the level of the 10 great martial masters? The master's threat hangs heavy in the air as the protagonist rushes toward the buried figure. The master of Nangya Pavilion was clearly unimpressed by the disciple's plea. Accepting the gravity of the moment, the disciple offered a respectful, formal greeting. The pavilion master regarded the disciple's unexpected, respectful bow with silent scrutiny. The master paused, his gaze intense, as the disciple made his unexpected choice. The Nangya Pavilion master stared down, his expression unyielding against the young disciple's audacious request. The pavilion master noted the disciple's surprising knowledge about the forgotten art. Now adorned in the required uniform, the youth stands silently, facing the daunting path ahead. The master reveals the devastating consequence of attempting their body remodeling techniques in his current frail state. Despite the master's warning of certain death, he remained resolute, buried in the earth. The moment of truth arrived, prompting a profound, physical submission under the harsh orange sky. Despite the master's warning of imminent death, the disciple remains resolute. The mysterious master, observing the protagonist's surprising choice, paused his harsh dismissal. A sharp, strained breath cuts through the silence, his resolve solidifying. The master clarifies his intentions, teaching only due to the demonic hall's directive. The formidable master of the Nangya Pavilion reveals his imposing identity, radiating intense power. He bowed deeply, accepting the master's daunting instruction as the reality of his decision settled in. The master studied the young disciple, weighing their worth against the legendary techniques of Nangya Pavilion. With his decision made, a fierce aura begins to manifest around the prodigy. The master of the Nangya Pavilion formally introduces himself with an intense, powerful presence. The master's bandaged hand was presented, shocking the trainee with its sheer immediacy. 3 days bled into one another, yet the trainee remained utterly silent under the relentless pressure. Master Sa unleashes a sudden, sharp strike, the air fracturing with the soundless impact of his technique. The sound effect emphasizes the sheer shock of the block technique. That frantic energy, the initial shock, had already given way to unexpected focus. The momentary shock of total darkness gives way to an overwhelming sense of disorientation. Bu Yunxiao's composure shattered upon realizing she could feel the sword's impending path. He absorbed the explanation of the martial art, already pondering its significance. The path of the beast, meant to sharpen every sense. Master Saw's words hung in the air, promising ultimate power if the difficult path could be walked. The master manifests his spectral beast, initiating the first step, acquiring the senses of a wild beast. Master Saw wore a satisfied, almost predatory smile, acknowledging the immediate shift in battle. The master surveyed the young prodigy, finally seeing the potential he sought for years. The prodigy, having tasted the master's utmost sincerity, departed with a promise. The master watched silently as the first hour passed, expecting weakness. Master Saw watched, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as the trainee moved far too quickly. Master Saw, holding his ground against the surprise attack, stood ready to test this prodigious student. Even blinded, the reality of this dangerous place registered instantly. He knew others were lurking, ready to strike. The shadow looms, weapon raised high as Saw Wu watches with fierce concentration. The sound effect conveyed a sharp, sudden movement as Bu Yunxiao reacted with wide-eyed intensity. Despite perceiving the path of the sword, the young trainee could not yet evade the master's strike. The blinding, painful shock of the blow leaves him momentarily reeling, eyes wide with shock and fading consciousness. Master Saw watched the starry night, certain the blind trainee was hopelessly lost in the darkness. The silent approach of the trainee was unnervingly fast, breaking through the expected hour of adaptation. Master Saw observed the frantic movements, noting the trainee was already fighting imaginary foes. The clash was instantaneous, Master Saw's powerful, unseen strike meeting the trainee's desperate, blinding counterattack. The blinding attack struck home, the sound effect emphasizing the raw impact of the blow. The master grimly observed the trainee's surprisingly rapid acclimation to the forced darkness. The master's grim smile signaled the sudden escalation of the intense lesson. Now that my sight is gone, what's important is my sense of balance. The force of the blow manifests as a blinding blue slash cutting through the oppressive gloom. Despite the relentless strikes, Bu Yunxiao met the onslaught with fierce, unyielding resolve. The terrifying force of the sword attack descended through the pouring rain. The master's hand gestured sharply, emphasizing the immediate commencement of this brutal trial. He managed to block the devastating technique, but the sheer difficulty was apparent in his exhausted grip. Despite the relentless strikes, Bu Yunxiao stared, his confusion giving way to sheer, strained determination. Master Saw unleashes the first strike, the faint sound of his movement a mere warning. The master stared, utterly stunned, as his prize water was completely consumed. His profound commitment, proven by enduring the unrelenting assault, finally elicited a genuine, emotional reaction from Master Saw. The master, clearly enjoying the severity of the task, prepares for the next lethal exchange. Master Saw unleashes his hidden power, the sudden manifestation of energy signaling the real test has begun. The initial shock fades. A profound connection is forged. I can see it. The path of the sword. He has seen the path of the sword, but without the insight to evade. The clash was instantaneous, a blinding, golden spark defying the darkness. The clash was explosive, a blinding collision of wills and honed skill. The master watched, his face a mixture of grim realization and awe at the raw effort being poured out. The master recoiled, utterly stunned by the impossible block of his soundless sword technique. 3 days had passed in a haze of relentless assault, but the question remained on the master's mind. The collision was explosive, sending Bu Yunxiao reeling from the impact. Despite the ceaseless attacks, he remains kneeling, taking the hits in quiet endurance. Even soaked in his own blood, the prodigy accepted the precious celestial spring water without question. Master Saw poured out the precious celestial spring water, viewing this sacrifice as worthy. The potent elixir immediately sparks a radical shift within his ravaged body. Master Saw gazes, seeing the reflection of the precious vial in Bu Yunxiao's eye. The master's maniacal grin confirmed his ultimate goal, finding the world's greatest prodigy. The lingering demon hall elder departs, leaving behind a lingering shadow of overwhelming power. The elder departed, leaving behind a lingering threat masked by fleeting grace. The sheer force of the unseen technique overwhelms the observer, their expression frozen in shock. The initial burst of power was contained, a silent question hanging in the air. Not yet. The exhaustion felt profound, even without physical exertion, demanding immediate control over this new, unsettling power. The sheer, blinding power of the technique erupted in a dazzling, focused explosion of light. The elder lets out a booming, satisfied laugh, feeling assured in his decision. Doubt flickered across his face as he gripped the unmastered blade before him. The elder's shocking promise of supreme power within a decade hangs heavy in the air. The elder's weighty offer sinks in, yet the disciple harbors a lingering hesitation. The weight of that monstrous encounter solidified his resolve. Laying a pavilion was no longer enough. The instructor stared, utterly baffled by this complete novice claiming to seek the sword arts. The instructor stared, utterly floored by the sudden, blunt admission of total inexperience. The instructor's disbelief was palpable, staring at the blank slate of the newcomer's swordsmanship history. Mastering one path is the fastest route, as each style demands a unique physical and energetic foundation. He offered a final, humbled apology before grasping his sword hilt. His shock was palpable. This novice claimed zero sword experience. The instructor could only roar in disbelief at the protagonist's admission. Accepting the elder's final decree, he readied himself for the next path laid before him. The elder confirms that the main sex arts are not transmitted through texts, surprising the youth. The blinding flash of concentrated energy erupted as the sword finally struck. The elder departs, leaving the protagonist grappling with newfound, volatile power. He seethed, realizing the magnitude of the sword skills he had just endured. The realization hit him. The techniques he just grasped were the very fundamentals of the beast path. The demon hall's orders were fulfilled. The elder offered no room for prolonged gratitude. He accepted the spiritual medicine, utterly devoted to the elder who bestowed such a profound gift. His blunt assessment hung in the air, leaving the young swordsman utterly stunned. That's how the martial world is. Jingik watched the newcomer, clearly suspecting a deception despite his proclaimed mastery. With profound gratitude for the elder's help, he offered a final, respectful farewell. The elder departed, leaving him to ponder the fleeting nature of favors in the martial world. The elder, dismissing the weight of his gift, simply stated it was an order. The elder's parting words echoed, forecasting a massive upheaval in the hell domain. The overwhelming sensory input from the beast path leaves him reeling, a sudden, profound fatigue washing over him. Even as he was being gifted this knowledge, he realized his complete lack of foundational understanding. The surge of newfound power left him breathless, gasping under the bright sky. He needed to learn how to manage this overwhelming new beast path power, like turning off a running faucet. The exhaustion remains, a strange side effect of learning the beast path. He must learn to control this overwhelming surge. Staring down at the detailed diagrams, she could only express shock. His mind churned, weighing the gravity of the impending chaos against his current overwhelming exhaustion. Having secured his path, he knew what he had to do next. There was no turning back now. The memory of the heavenly demon, a legendary master from centuries past, burns bright in the fiery aftermath. A terrifying presence, the Huo Wu Sword Emperor Jekwan, radiates overwhelming power. The grand gates of the Huo Wu Sword sect loomed, marking the next stage of his journey. Standing before the imposing gates of the Fire Rain Sword sect, the weight of past events fueled his next move. The newcomer's sudden arrival startled the disciple, making the instructor pause mid-thought. The instructor stared, utterly bewildered by the novice's admission of total inexperience. Despite the instructor's veiled warning, he remained resolute in his chosen path. The instructor stared in disbelief as the novice admitted his complete lack of sword knowledge. The instructor points out the ranks within the beginner hall, listing the ascent from entry-level to established disciples. He explained his recent training location, stating he spent the last 2 weeks at Langya Pavilion. The instructor recoiled, utterly baffled by this complete novice's audacious claim. The instructor simply resigned himself to the hassle, shrugging off the oddity of the protagonist's request. A new figure introduces himself formally, seemingly in charge of this introductory area. Stunned by the instructor's blunt assessment, the disciple could only stare back in disbelief. He firmly declared his intention to master the Huawu sword sex arts despite the instructor's doubts. The heavy thud of an imposing boot landing solidified the sheer weight of the moment. The instructor presents the sacred teachings with a flourish, ready to instruct the newest disciple. The instructor was visibly shocked by this unbelievable admission of total inexperience. Stunned by the request to immediately study forms when he'd never even touched a sword, the youth stood speechless before the instructor. His shock was palpable. How could he be expected to understand diagrams when he knew nothing of the sword? The instructor's disbelief sharpens as the youth admits complete inexperience with swordsmanship. The instructor stared, bewildered by the student's complete lack of formal sword background. The instructor connects his records of the protagonist as a scholar to his unusual fighting style. This raw talent, coupled with his calculated choices, suggests an incredible potential even from this humble beginning. With genuine instruction, the latent power within him was about to awaken. The instructor enthusiastically affirmed the critical first step: complete body release and fluid motion. The core principles of release the body and flow effortlessly are illuminated through the instructor's demonstration on the scroll. Jingik watches, stunned by the raw, adapted power he just witnessed in the forms. The instructor's careful demonstration resulted in an immediate, instinctive response from the novice swordsman. The instructor praised his performance, ushering him forward with a supportive, knowing gesture. The instructor stood ready, the weight of the promotion test now upon him. Instructor Jingik watched, stunned by the sheer speed of assimilation he had just witnessed. The instructor's surprised expression masks a predatory smile as he acknowledges the youth's unexpected talent. The instructor's attempt to stop the deviation fails as the protagonist unleashes the final flurry. The instructor's smug confidence instantly shattered upon witnessing the terrifying display. Instructor Jinguk, taken aback by the display, expresses his profound gratitude for the meticulous teaching. Instructor Jinguk's intense gaze confirmed the reality of the immediate assessment. The chance for demonstration arrived sooner than anticipated. He had to prove himself now. The instructor watched in stunned silence as the figure ignited with palpable, murderous intent. The instructor watched, recognizing the sudden, fierce focus in the youth's determined eyes as he gripped the sword. The imaginary foe vanishes as the first form is declared: opponent. The instructor watched, aghast, as the third form ripped through the air with unexpected ferocity. Instructor Jingik's closing words, warning of the potent killing intent, finally register. The instructor observes the initial form, noting how the expected gentleness of drifting rain is absent. The expected soft flow of drifting rain is nowhere to be found. The instructor watched in stunned silence as the youth performed the technique. The instructor recoils from the raw, focused malice woven into the martial art. This adaptation feels deeply personal and vengeful. To see the Hua Wu sex technique, feigned as righteousness within the demonic road, twist like this. What secret is he hiding? The weight of the fully unleashed technique settled heavily in the instructor's mind. The imaginary opponent is conjured, and the first form of the Hua Wu 13 begins. The final, overwhelming move shattered the illusion, leaving only the brilliant point of the technique piercing the darkness. The instructor, Jingik, watched solemnly as the youth prepared for the final assessment of the test. The instructor's warning about the potent killing intent lingered as the youth's gaze hardened. The imaginary opponent shattered under the sheer force. The sound of violent crack of impending doom. The phantom image of the killer floods his mind, fueling a vengeful focus. His eyes blaze red with absolute, singular purpose. The instructor unleashes the final, decisive barrage, leaving no room for evasion. The seventh sequence of the Hua Wu forms erupts, bathed in furious crimson energy. The first form of the Hua Wu 13 unleashes, cloaked in raw, terrifying intent. The instructor internally notes the sheer, blinding speed of the final strike. He unleashes the full force of his conviction, his blade tracing arcs of terrifying crimson energy. His final, desperate strike met the overwhelming force, resulting in a stifled cry of defeat. The final, unified strike was unleashed, a culmination of all preceding forms. He resolves to unleash everything, channeling every remaining form into a singular, devastating conclusion. The final, overwhelming strike connects, shattering the instructor's defense. The final, devastating strike locks into place, the overwhelming killing intent echoing in the violent clash of energy. The oppressive, crimson energy of his final, overwhelming strike surged forth. The final, overwhelming strike landed, silencing the area in a brutal burst of crimson energy. The instructor braced himself as the final, unrestrained form erupted in a torrent of murderous intent. The instructor's final words lingered, a potent warning about the murderous intent in his blade. The imagined final blow was unleashed, culminating the demonstration in a terrifying release of power. The moment of final execution hangs heavy, his sweating hand gripping the hilt tightly. The instructor, Jingek, offered a final, weighty warning about his potent killing intent. The instructor paused, realizing his intense demonstration had concluded, leaving a heavy silence in the room. The evaluation criteria had been set. Grasp of swordcraft and combat application of the Huawu 13 forms. The imaginary opponent materialized, setting the stage for the decisive evaluation. The overwhelming intensity of the final flurry culminated in a decisive victory. The instructor hands over the sword, setting the stage for the promotion test. Instructor Jingik pondered the youth's terrifying assimilation speed. His sincere gratitude shone through a formal bow, acknowledging the fundamental teaching received. Instructor Jingik's concern faded as a knowing smile touched his lips. The instructor recognized the terrifying intent layered within the seemingly correct forms. Instructor Jingik's parting words, a warning about the potent killing intent in his sword, left the youth deeply unsettled. Instructor Jingik's internal monologue shifts as he processes the reality of the youth's rapid mastery. His rapid assimilation of the savage swordplay was astonishing, prompting this swift promotion. His rapid assimilation of deadly swordplay meant his promotion arrived sooner than anyone predicted. The instructor's final words about his potent killing intent still lingered as he reached the door. He watched the display with a knowing, almost unsettling intensity. The junior hall instructor immediately dismisses the successful examinee. Jianeng Wang, the junior hall instructor, reveals himself with a look of stern disapproval. The instructor pointed toward the sign marking the next level of training. He stood ready, his expression calm amidst the tension of the unexpected duel. The newcomer stood confidently in the doorway, awaiting the instructor's decision after his surprising declaration. The instructor grimaced, clearly unimpressed by the unexpected challenge being issued. Despite the taunts, he maintains a composed posture, preparing to prove his worth. The instructor's face tightened, clearly registering the audacity of the sudden challenge. The instructor pointed dismissively, ordering the newcomer to take a seat among the assembled students. The instructor warns that executing the Fire Rain Thunderclap sword without proper skill will only cause self-harm. The instructor frowned, concluding that the Fire Rain sword art was merely basic groundwork. The opponent looked on, assessing the strange calm emanating from the new arrival. The attacker looms over his opponent with a wicked, predatory smirk. With a smug grin, the student points directly, making his unexpected challenge. The opponent's reckless aggression earned a sharp, startled retort. His unsettling grin confirmed his malice. This was no mere spar. The nominated student's dismissive challenge hung heavy in the air, demanding immediate reaction. The challenger launched his Fire Rain Thunderclap sword technique with aggressive intent. He braced himself. That killing blow from the Asura sword sect now aimed directly at him. The opponent initiates a dramatic, vertical attack, seemingly relying on brute force and speed. The challenger, armed only with a wooden sword, stepped forward, facing the scornful grin of his opponent. The formal setting of the advanced hall awaited the duel, the onlookers observing the tense standoff. The opponent, blinded by arrogance, charged forward, unleashing the promised technique. With a blinding clash, the immediate danger was averted. The challenger unleashes the fire rain thunderclap sword with arrogant speed. His wild assault, fueled by overconfidence, brings forth the fire rain sword art. The fire rain thunderclap sword connects, yet the resulting clash feels strangely muted. The opponent registered the unexpected sensation through his grip. Consumed by arrogance, his taunt erupts as he charges forward with overwhelming, reckless force. The opponent unleashes the full force of the fire rain thunderclap sword technique with maniacal laughter. The aggressor's confident laughter abruptly twists into confusion as his attack misses entirely. The golden energy exploded outward, signaling the overwhelming force behind the rival's technique. He watched the challenger's movements, something in the technique feeling oddly familiar yet subtly altered. The overwhelming pressure of the final, killing blow was met with eerie calm. The others scoffed at the idea, doubting any novice could grasp such power. The intensity of the duel sharpened his gaze, every fiber of his being focused on the opponent's subtle shifts. The powerful impact of the finishing move slammed down, vibrating the very floorboards beneath him. The challenger lunges forward, sword drawn, ready to test the newcomer's proclaimed skills. The moment of truth arrived as he gripped his blunt, practiced sword, his dark eyes locking onto his opponent. His expression was cold, noting the intense, almost imperceptible sound of impact. The intended killing blow meets an impossible deflection as the novice perfectly parries the fiery strike. The onlookers gasped as the initial clash confirmed their fears. The aggressor sneers, unleashing his technique, a move from the fire rain sword art. His perfectly executed mimicry of the fire rain sword art left the onlooker stunned and wide-eyed. Underestimating his opponent's skill, the arrogant duelist believes he can effortlessly replicate the technique. The aggressor's powerful blow, utilizing the Asura sword sex killing move, met with an unexpected, visceral reaction. The sheer intensity of the attack stunned the onlooker into disbelief. This must be the legendary fire rain sword art. The opponent, infuriated by the unexpected display, suspects a calculated move for advancement. The opponent seized, realizing the challenger's unexpected skill posed a real threat to his standing. Enraged by the challenge, his eyes flare as he unleashes a devastating secret technique. The Asura sword sex killing move, the blood-breaking strike, unleashes with terrifying intensity. The duel was accepted, and now the instructor studied the challenger with skepticism. As the red energy intensified, his expression hardened, a faint, ominous sound accompanying the clash. The aggressor's finishing blow missed, leaving the instructor stunned by the sheer unexpectedness of the counter. He unleashes a technique born from the Asura sword sect. His signature move, the unexpected fire rain sword art, flashed forth, a stark challenge laid bare. The clash erupted in a blinding flash of kinetic energy, the sound effects echoing the impact. The crowd, momentarily stunned by the sudden escalation, could only watch with wide-eyed disbelief. The instructor's expression shifted, witnessing the young challenger's bold declaration. He unleashes the 13th move of the fire rain sword art, shrouded in chilling energy. The aggressor's initial flurry of strikes was met only with evasive maneuvers. The crowd watched, utterly stunned by the unexpected, almost mocking counter. The ultimate strike, a killing move from the Asura sword sect, had found its mark. The defeated rival lay prone, confirming Yunxiao's immediate victory in the master's eyes. The master regarded the young man's defiant declaration with a knowing, intense gaze. The gravity of the warning settled heavily as the master revealed the true danger. The master looked down, his imposing presence contrasting with Yunxiao's shocked stance below. The instructor, Jin Gak, finally revealed the true nature of his past. The instructor dismissed his pleas, signaling a final, cold decision. The sheer audacity of using lethal force shocked the assembled candidates into disbelief. The instructor's fury boils over, emphasizing the brutal reality of this supposed martial hall. Despite the inherent danger, Yunxiao's resolve remained absolute. The finality of the master's judgment settled over the failed disciples. The failing disciples scattered, leaving Yunsel to face the imposing figure before him. The instructor, enraged by the near-fatal strike, immediately commanded the failed candidates to depart. The instructor watched the humbled disciples, realizing the boy's intense obsession was rooted in something deeper. The instructor pressed on, highlighting the true nature of mastering the Walu sword style. The failed disciples looked on in shock as the master laid out the grim reality of their situation. The young master, enraged by the deception, recoiled as he prepared to strike back. Even with the grave warning, Yunxiao's resolve remained unshaken. The master observed the young warrior, sensing an overwhelming, almost frightening commitment to his path. The instructor, recalling his own past with the killing sword, offered a stark warning about the path Bu Yunsel walked. The master martial artist paused, his expression betraying a flicker of concern after hearing Yunxiao's unwavering resolve. Even with the terrifying risks laid bare, Yunxiao's expression remained fixed on his goal. The master remained unconvinced by Yunxiao's protestation of only knowing the basics. Yunsel chose to remain, refusing the ascent to the advanced hall for now. The unwavering resolve, marked by that disfiguring scar, was clear in his eyes. His warning hung heavy, detailing the extreme risk involved in mastering the General Musang. He harbors deep suspicion of any display meant only to impress others. The instructor delivers a final, sharp warning about straying from the required sword forms. His rage boiled over, culminating in a chilling, absolute threat of death. The master simply stares, processing the shocking depth of Yunxiao's commitment to his deadly path. After 4 days of intense teaching, the master acknowledged the sheer tenacity of Bu Yunsel. The master's eyes widened in disbelief at the raw power displayed. He realized Yunsel was not merely talented, but truly a novice who had grasped the beast's sword. This raw, visceral intensity, even after being wounded, proved his commitment to mastering the martial arts. Despite the dire warning of potential crippling injury, his hunger for vengeance burned too brightly. The overwhelming power of the Wa Biokro sword surges forth, a blinding display of lightning and intent. Despite the terrifying warning of cripple-making risks, his resolve for revenge remained absolute. Yunsel stood ready, his resolve hardening against the instructor's skeptical gaze. The instructor emphasized the technique required to rapidly rotate the body for the next move. The instructor paused, absorbing the young man's chilling resolve. Even amidst the grim reality, Yunxiao's resolve for revenge burned fiercely. A hand dripping with fresh blood reaches for the sheath, a stark monument to his unwavering, bloody resolve. Yunxiao's desperate vow hung heavy, confirming his willingness to sacrifice everything for vengeance. Despite the grave risks, the young warrior's dedication to vengeance burned brighter than any fear of injury. This instructor, too, once lived by the deadly path of the killing sword. The instructor reveals how his life's path of the killing sword ultimately led to his downfall. He accepted the dire warning, his resolve hardened by the promise of vengeance. The master warns him, "See Allah," of the sorrowful burdens carried by those who live by the sword. The master explains why warriors of the sword world often remain silent about their pasts. Yunxiao's shock was evident. This master was offering a path to bridge his foundation gap. Bu Yunxiao's declaration hung in the air, met by the instructor's grim expression. He stood resolute, despite the grave warning about crippling danger. The instructor finally addressed him, prompting the student to state his name clearly. The instructor paused, his expression hardening at Yunxiao's blatant display of killing intent. The instructor fixed him with a hard, unwavering gaze, his expression telling Yunsel the weight of his decision. His desperation for vengeance was clear, even as the master asked him about the risk. His initial shock yields to a severe look as he assesses the newcomer's true nature. Facing the masters of the advanced hall, Yunsel understood the vast gulf he still needed to cross. The master pauses, pointing a clear warning at Yunsel. The instructor makes a shocking declaration. He will teach Bu Yunsel his own superior art. Despite the grave warning about crippling injury, Yunxiao's resolve for vengeance remained absolute. My devotion to vengeance compels me to risk even my very soul. Despite the extreme danger, Yunseol's resolve for revenge burned hotter than any risk. Despite the grave warnings about the lethal risks, Yunseol's resolve remained unshaken. The head instructor unrolls the scroll, its ancient script detailing the 7 teachings. The lesson concluded, but the instructor beckoned him, ready to impart deeper wisdom. The head instructor begins his recitation, addressing the new presence in the senior hall. His expression remains steady, acknowledging the challenge of the senior hall. The head instructor, holding the scripture, prepared to share the profound wisdom of the 7 teachings. The instructor's calm assessment contrasted sharply with the shock of the attacker. The instructor's challenging query hung in the air, but Bu Yunsul's swift response had already shifted the dynamic. His intense focus was unwavering as the head instructor posed the crucial, swordless test. The aftermath of the murder is split. Pity for the dead versus the cold reality of a swordsman stained with blood. The elder instructor paused, his expression revealing an age-old wisdom. The senior trainees, already immersed in their texts, settled in to receive the foundational teachings once more. The master calmly continues detailing the core tenets of the Huayu sword teachings, principles built upon the foundation the new trainee has achieved. The instructor's projection loomed, its terrifying presence questioning Bu Yunsul's mastery of unarmed combat. The head instructor resumed his lecture, addressing the newly arrived trainee with familiar formalities. The master instructor's gaze remained steady, demanding an answer that would determine his fate here. The instructor led Bu Yunsul away from the training area, deeper into the serene grounds. His direct question hung in the air, demanding an answer that proved my worth. The master instructor subtly breaks the stem with a soft, almost imperceptible pressure. The instructor's swift, unexpected move completely overwhelmed him. The instructor's eerie, yellow-tinged eyes held a knowing intensity as he finished his profound explanation. His sudden, impossible speed left the senior trainees stunned and utterly bewildered. The characters, illuminated by a pale light, signify the senior hall. His burning gaze reflected the intensity of the challenge. The master instructor offered a simple, yet profound lesson, presenting a bamboo leaf as his temporary blade. The instantaneous realization hit, forcing a desperate reliance on his innate ability. A final, desperate lunge. The challenger's eyes burn with wild, encroaching yellow light. Despite not landing a hit, Bu Yunsul's sheer movement had passed the test. The instructor's swift counter caught the trainee utterly off guard. The instructor's weathered eyes betray a moment of shock and disbelief. The genius, completely outmaneuvered, registered utter shock as Bu Yunsul vanished. The instructor moved with impossible speed, a sudden blur demonstrating the martial truth he just preached. The 5 Peaks swordsmen could only stare, utterly stunned by the impossible speed they witnessed. The instructor's sharp gaze confirmed my understanding of the unspoken question. A sudden, firm stomp punctuated the silence. A sudden, terrifying shock registered across his face as Bu Yunsul vanished. The instructor makes a sweeping gesture, presenting a small sprig of greenery as he concludes his profound lesson. The instructor's blade, a fleeting blur, passed through his grasp, leaving only a searing afterimage. His hand reached out, momentarily grasping an empty space where the opponent's blade should have been. The blinding flash confirms the master's move, leaving the attacker utterly defenseless. The challenger's desperate attempt to defend ended in a brutal, jarring impact. The challenger grunted, failing to land a single blow against Bu Yunsul's impossible speed. The instructor's hand suddenly clamps down, the sharp impact breaking the sudden calm. The instructor laughed, a strange acknowledgement as he placed a hand upon the kneeling trainee. A single bead of sweat traces the shock across his stunned face. The elder instructor leaned closer, his expression expectant following the profound theoretical exchange. The challenger's shock was palpable. He could not track the impossible speed of the counter. The master beckoned Bu Yunsul closer, the lesson seemingly concluded for now. The instructor held a simple green sprig, his stern gaze locking onto Bu Yunsul. The near miss hung in the air, the sheer speed of the unseen force rustling the leaves above. The instructor's ancient eyes focus intently on the glowing sprout, a silent assessment after the test. The intensity of the test subsided as the instructor delivered his final judgment, a reprieve earned. The challenger's desperate observation confirms the terrifying disparity in speed and instinct. He finally stood clear of the elder's challenge. The intense trial apparently concluded for the day. The lesson concluded, Bu Yunsel stood alone, the senior hall's path now open for exploration. A moment of quiet intensity follows his successful, yet unacknowledged, defense. He now considered the risks of lingering in this harsh environment. The instructor's intense gaze held the weight of the senior hall's expectations. The ambush begins as the hidden figures start counting, closing in on the newly arrived trainee. The leader finishes his tally, setting the stage for a confrontation. So you're Bu Yunsel. I've heard about you. The arrival of the newcomer has clearly unsettled the established hierarchy here. The senior hall trainee displayed a chilling, confident smirk after the master's challenge. His eyes, scarred and intense, registered the impossible evasion. As the apparent leader revealed the group's pride, he declared there was still one more master waiting. The confrontation has begun as the warrior issues a direct challenge to the newcomer. The master's strike was delivered with blinding speed, the sound effect echoing the violence. The violent display of speed leaves his opponents reeling in disbelief and terror. The sudden, impossible display of speed left the senior trainees utterly stunned and visibly unnerved. The instructor's query hangs heavy, demanding an answer that proves his worthiness to stay. So you're Bu Yunsel. I've heard about you. The intensity in his stare speaks volumes. They realize they are facing something far beyond their expectations. The confrontation is set. Jinha stands firm, framed by the shocked onlookers and the defeated foe. The imposing figure dismisses them with utter contempt, cementing their lower status. The confrontation ended, but the fury of the defeated was clear. They swore vengeance as they retreated. Jinha watched, her expression hardening as the master's warning about potential spies sunk in. His companion's sudden retreat drew a bitter, single-word condemnation from the figure standing firm. The master's final words of encouragement hung in the air, immediately broken by a sharp, urgent gong. Dismissing the spy concern, the master turns his attention back to the confrontation. He fixes his piercing gaze on Bu Yunsel. The direct challenge hung heavy in the air, forcing an immediate choice between factions. The instructor signaled the end of theory, calling forth one disciple to demonstrate their personalized mastery. The master now demands the final trial. To perform the Fire Rain Sword's first form, Hyun. The harsh sound echoed as Jinha stood ready, sword drawn, his gaze fixed. The lecture concluded, but this quiet moment of exhaustion was quickly broken. The sudden, sharp sound of impact echoed as Jinha's shocked realization hit home. The crowd settles as the master calls the next name. The tension lingers as they stand in stark contrast, their silent exchange heavy with unspoken warnings. The master's severe gaze settled, scrutinizing every face in the room. His grip tightens on the blade, a chilling power erupting around him as his glare intensifies. The clash intensified, a blinding exchange where his own counter disrupted the expected flow of Hyun. Despite her initial sternness, Jinha's sudden confrontation leaves this disciple visibly shaken and uncertain. The instructor's warning about hidden enemies hung heavy in the air, but the call to action drowned out the doubt. The warning lands heavily, Jinha realizing the true stakes of the gathering. The relaxed entry requirements suddenly felt suspicious, raising red flags about infiltrators. The sudden agony of the trapped creature confirmed the lurking danger. The master's intense gaze settled on the student's poorly personalized sword form. The stern instructor watched them, clearly disappointed in Jinha's personalized version of the form. That sudden, chilling realization confirmed the hidden threat among them. The master's imposing presence dominated the foreground as the student stood silently, awaiting judgment. Acknowledging the depth of the knowledge imparted, the young swordsman prepares for the next phase. The final pronouncements concluded, leaving everyone to ponder the intense lessons learned. The final lesson concludes under a fiery sky, signaling an imminent confrontation. Even after the solemn lectures ended, a small, unassuming creature remained behind. The heavy sound of the gong signaled the abrupt end of their studies. With the initial lesson concluded, the ominous shadow of an enormous bird cast itself over the training grounds. The master finished imparting his wisdom, the gesture marking the conclusion of the formal instruction. The elder closed his eyes, satisfied with the culmination of his teachings. Even masters who have fought countless battles set aside time to study the principles, because knowing is not the same as doing. His solemn farewell concluded. The master offered a final blessing for the battles ahead. The master's chilling dismissal struck a nerve, leaving the disciple visibly shaken by the accusation of betrayal. With a commanding gesture, the master halted the crowd, bringing the intense instruction to an abrupt close. The ominous stone mountain loomed beneath the twilight sky, a silent monument to the trials ahead. The formal instruction concluded, replaced by the sharp, resounding clang of a gong. The final declaration hung in the air, transitioning the disciples from students to participants. The elder's sharp, red-tinged gaze lingered as the woman beside him reacted with sudden shock. His cold, judging gaze lingered, confirming his distrust of my intentions. The master seemed to sigh, his momentary sternness already replaced by a grim acceptance. The stern master surveyed the disciples, his crimson eyes burning with fierce intensity. Stunned by the revelation, the gathered candidates questioned the reality of this new challenge. The true horror of the preceding fight was merely the prelude. The senior martial artist stood firm, the sheer authority in his posture undeniable as he issued his terrifying decree. The sudden threat made one pause, raising a hand as if to halt an unseen danger nearby. Standing firm, he listened as the monstrous figure loomed, sharing the horrifying details of the next phase. With the rules laid bare, the assembled candidates faced the grim reality of the trials ahead. The intense focus in his eyes showed the absolute malice behind the murderous decree. The sadistic smile of the speaker confirmed their true, horrifying intentions. The elder's solemn expression confirms the grim reality of the required sacrifice. The air crackles with sudden, ominous intent as the chilling message sinks in. Linger too long in the shrinking safe zones, and these spectral assassins will claim you. That murderous aura reaches even here. They're clearly masters of incredible skill. The pronouncement hung heavy, punctuated by the speaker's contemptuous gesture. The elder burst into gleeful laughter, his declaration of survival's gruesome nature echoing. A chilling, masked figure emanates dark energy, confirming the seriousness of the third trial. Defeating one of these spectral hunters grants instant qualification. The realization dawns. Facing a killing ghost is more perilous than slaughtering their peers. A desperate plea cuts through the tension, seeking immediate sanctuary. The grim lesson concluded. Only lethal force is permitted for advancement. The chilling decree hangs heavy, casting a shadow over the looming mountain. I need to move quickly. The clash of skills is overwhelming. I've already drawn too much unwanted attention. The overseer's declaration hung heavy, a mandate of brutal self-selection before the shadowy disciples. The ground vibrates violently as someone sprints away with incredible force. Realizing the urgency, I must reach the safest haven immediately. The one elder sat prepared. With a sharp sound effect, the character makes a sudden, powerful move, breaking free from the tense standoff. The chilling decree hangs in the air, forcing him to move immediately before he's surrounded once more. He quickly placed his hand on the ground, focusing on the raw sensory input. Beneath the shimmering disruption, he sensed the immediate, violent threat closing in. The frantic victim's plea echoes as the shadow of the swordsman falls over him. The pursued fighter, now saved, faces his rescuer, his mind racing. The sudden, sharp pain confirmed his suspicion. These attacks were deadly serious, not mere illusions. The frantic escape is over, but the danger immediately materializes. 3 attackers have already converged. Liang accepted the offered company, sensing a tentative trust from the desperate man. The residual tremor of the powerful movement sent sand scattering violently across the ground. The shocking, brutal rules of the third trial are laid bare, creating instant tension. Breaking through the dense foliage, The chase demands immediate, decisive action. The pursuers arrived, swords drawn, their menacing presence overshadowing the terrified watchers below. The utter ruthlessness of the command left his fellow disciples stunned and slack-jawed. The earth itself recoiled from the unseen impact as powerful vibrations tore through the ground. My instinct tells me this secluded shack, nestled against the imposing mountains, is the safest sanctuary for now. The urgency to escape is clear. He immediately dives toward the one place he feels is truly safe. The sheer desperation of their flight was evident as they scraped across the dirt, both utterly spent. The terrified escapee, having just been saved, immediately pleaded for companionship. The rescued man profusely thanked him, relieved to be alive. He steadied himself, feeling the earth hum beneath his palm, sensing distant movements. The situation comes to me as vividly as if I could see it. Still, the presence of that calm, skilled pursuer unnerved him deeply. The ecstatic young man, teeth bared in a predatory smile, eagerly awaits the next brutal phase. The first opponent, bearing a weapon, pauses as the other rushes forward, gesturing wildly. The sudden revelation of mutual killing left him visibly shaken, clutching his chest in disbelief. The weight of this new, brutal reality settled upon him as he considered his next move. A sharp intake of breath underscores the sudden, chilling revelation of the trial's true nature. With consent seemingly granted, the cheerful youth eagerly matched his pace to his new, stoic companion. The chilling silence of the forest returned, masking the relief of the recent encounter. The confrontation ends, leaving only the harsh sounds of exertion beneath the towering peaks. A sudden, sharp intake of breath, the physical toll of the revelation hitting hard. The shocked assassin realized their perfect deception had crumbled before this insightful gaze. The exposed assassin could only offer a silent, stunned reaction to the sudden reveal. This powerful vow of vengeance was met with the sudden appearance of a familiar, burning hatred. That familiar, all-consuming fire of vengeance was finally stoked. The young man's shock was palpable as the true depth of his companion's deception was revealed. A sudden rustle above confirms the presence of an unseen shadow, unnerving his companion hiding below. The victor, now focused, rushes forward, pulling his comrade along. Their blades meet in a blinding clash of desperate energy and swift, dark intent. The assassin's shock is evident. Realizing his forbidden technique has been seen through, the assassin unleashes a devastating, swift strike, the final act of their confrontation. The devastating strike connected, the assassin's deception ending in a flash of scarlet energy. The assassin stood silently, the realization of exposure crushing their carefully constructed facade. Caught mid-lunge, the shocked assassin realized their disguise was utterly seen through. The hidden assassin's final words spark a terrifying, predatory rage in the protagonist's glowing red eyes. The fight has momentarily paused, revealing the harsh aftermath of the clash for the observer. His fury burns, face streaked with blood, as he clutches the hilt, realizing the game is over. His disbelief was shattered as the unseen attack connected, leaving him utterly bewildered. The assassin's blinding strike meets an unexpected, almost supernatural defense. The assassin lunges, met only by a furious, glowing red stare. The assassin lunges forward, their movements now tracked and anticipated. The assassin grunted in pain, his facade of perfection utterly shattered by the shocking revelation. Yunxiao unleashes a swift, decisive strike, cutting through the surrounding assailants. Despite the assassin's perfect deception, his movements were already anticipated. The assassin's attempted deception ends abruptly as Yunxiao swiftly lands a devastating, precise blow. With his true identity exposed, the assassin could only react with a guttural cry as the counterattack landed. The assassin, revealing his drawn blade, bursts forth with blinding speed. The assassin's cold facade shattered as the true extent of his enemy's perception became horrifyingly clear. The assassin's disbelief was palpable, his perfectly crafted facade shattering in an instant. The assassin unleashes a blinding, blood-red strike, moving faster than the eye can track. The assassin, drenched in his own gruesome display, broke into a manic, blood-splattered laugh. The resurfacing desire for vengeance grips him, staining his resolve with blood and darkness. The swift, brutal efficiency of Yun Seal's blade had silenced the assassins completely. The assassin's smug declaration was immediately shattered by a sudden, terrifying realization. The assassin, wounded and disarmed, can only offer a stunned silence to the devastating revelation. Even with his skills on display, the true threat remains. Never lower your vigilance. The assassin's desperate ploy met a blinding, crushing counterattack. The force of their confrontation erupts in a brilliant, violent flash of impact. The assassin's blade met the counterattack in a brilliant, explosive clash. The assassin stared, realizing his supposed perfection was utterly transparent. Even with my techniques revealed, your surprise is palpable. The assassin materialized, their face a void save for chilling white eyes. The revelation of his true identity shattered the assassin's composure, leaving him utterly stunned. He reveals the hidden blades he'd concealed, shattering the enemy's illusion of safety. My superior perception pierced through the assassin's disguise. Noticing the rigid posture, he mockingly reveals his true intention. He kept the assassin around purely out of clinical interest in his deceitful techniques. He reveals his true reason for letting the assassin live, gathering intel on deception. The assassin's carefully constructed facade of innocence shatters into a primal snarl of defeated rage. The assassin's desperate strike met with an unexpected counter, revealing the hidden weaponry. His facade shattered, his wide, blood-splattered eyes revealed a deep, unnerving realization. The shock was immense. His carefully constructed deception was completely unmasked. The assassin's confidence crumbles as the glowing red eye locks onto him. The assassin launches a rapid volley, met only by blinding red slashes of deflection. The assassin's supposed perfection crumbles as a fatal blow connects, his wide eyes reflecting sudden shock. The assassin's final gambit, hidden weapons and all, was utterly meaningless now. The assassin delivers the crushing final blow, questioning the very foundation of the spy's tactics. A sudden, excruciating blow lands, accompanied by a raw, guttural scream. The assassin lunged, but the protagonist had seen through the trap. The planned trap worked. The enemy formation constricted in the narrow space. The blinding light confirms the successful, messy dispatch of his enemy. The realization hits. Facing these individuals one by one makes victory achievable. The plan worked. The trapped rat, cornered, lay broken amidst the dust in his own spilled blood. The quick escape was shattered. A whip strike knocked him off balance. His face, already marred by conflict, still held that obsessive thirst for life. The ambush failed. The traitor's route was predicted, leading the hunters into his trap. The clash ended. The victor knelt over the fallen assassin. The assassin's desperate charge was met with a sudden, blinding counterattack. The lingering question remained. Once revenge was truly complete, would he be able to share that same free smile? The failed escape only resulted in a brutal, bloody halt to his desperation. The fight concluded with a heavy sound, the fate sealed by the blade. The desperate pursuit was momentarily halted, but now he drew his blades, ready for the next clash. From this low angle, the victor stands momentarily triumphant amidst the dense forest. The debris flies upward, signs of a powerful impact shaking the forest floor. The deafening, visceral sound of the confrontation ripped through the air. Despite relying on basic techniques, he managed to overcome the assassins of the deadly secret. Yet, even with this talent displayed, he is merely one among many prodigies in this harsh landscape. The battle had finally reached its climax, transitioning from open chaos to a tightly constrained zone of lethal engagement. The desperation in his scream signaled the moment they had waited for. The assassins, realizing he is isolated, order their comrades to pursue relentlessly. The whip lashes out in a devastating arc, the serrated edge flashing as the enemy recoils. With the enemy's formation broken, he seized the moment, unleashing a swift, decisive strike. The calculated strategy paid off as the sword sliced through the air, the sound effects echoing the sudden, violent collision. The whip snapped, creating an opening in the formation. Now was the moment to break free. The pursuit was relentless. His pursuer stubbornly kept pace despite the dangers. Realizing direct confrontation is suicide, his mind races for an escape route. The intense battle concluded, leaving only silence upon the desolate peak. The observer questions the current grim tally of survivors after the initial bloody encounters. The shock of the forced retreat was masked by the old man's furious expression. The whip struck the wall, creating a perfect opening as the assassins urged each other to break free. Despite their momentary escape, the enemy's grin showed they weren't finished with their trap. The White Horse Squad's formation shattered under the unexpected counterattack. The sound of metal screaming as the calculated move found its mark. Seeing his momentary advantage, the assassin lunged forward with savage glee. The whip snapped back violently, narrowly missing its target. The planned ambush was sprung, forcing the hero into a desperate forward charge against the closing assassins. The near miss, the desperate yell, the momentary lapse has given the trapped assassins an opening. With the immediate threat dealt with, the protagonist readies himself for the next necessary step. The observer watches, a low grunt of realization escaping him as the trap springs. The trap was sprung, but the enemy anticipated their final move. The schematics were analyzed, and the final move was decided. Unleash the hidden assassins. The trap was sprung, forcing the White Horse Squad into this unclosed space. Having evaded his pursuers, the lone figure presses onward, ascending toward the formidable gates of Firestorm Sword Hall. The White Horse Squad members gather, realizing their formation's weakness has been exposed. The overwhelming pressure of the trap forced a hasty retreat toward the Firestorm Sword Hall entrance. The trap was sprung. They swarmed the narrow passage, cornering him. The enemy leader grins, sensing the trap's success, while his shadowy comrade lingers close behind. The tide had turned. Their expected formation was broken. The masked assassin lunges, but the protagonist meets the attack with blinding speed and raw aggression. His defiant shout cut through the tension as he closed the distance, ready to exploit their assumptions. With the formation broken, the narrow space became his advantage. Victory was now possible one-on-one. The White Horse Squad's formation was broken by the whip's sudden deflection. The trapped rat thought a shallow trick would work. The unexpected deflection confirmed his desperate gamble was working. The calculated feint worked. The White Horse Squad's formation shattered under the swift counterattack. The ambush was sprung. The cloaked assassin moved with blinding speed, forcing a desperate, reflexive block. The whip technique lashes out violently, momentarily stunning the pursuers. The desperate retreat into the narrow confines was supposed to be a tactical advantage, but the realization dawns. This trap is also too tight for him. With their formation broken, the assassins saw their opening, desperate to escape the trap. The deadly confrontation explodes into a flash of red energy and spraying blood. The assassin recoiled in shock as his opponent struck with blinding speed. Realizing their foe was reading their every move, the shadow assassin stood amidst the crimson vortex, his eyes burning with cold obsession. The masked figure paused, an unnerving silence falling as they raised a finger to their lips. He calculated the odds. Facing these assassins individually offered a path to victory. The opponent, sensing an opening after the whip's deflection, lunged forward for the counter. The crack of impact echoed as the desperate escape attempt was brutally halted. The maneuver was unexpected, forcing an instant reaction. With the tight formation compromised, his precise strike shatters the opponent's defense. His smug confidence instantly vanished as the rebound of the weapon spelled disaster. Seeing their chance after the whip bounced away, the assassins urged each other to flee. The unexpected whip movement created a momentary breach, a desperate opening to escape. The darkness deepens as the battle's outcome hangs precariously in the balance. The planned ambush had succeeded. Now, only a chilling confrontation remained. The hunter's suspicion cuts through the air. He sees through the desperate ruse. The aggressor's rage boiled over, demanding an answer to his accusation. The protagonist's arrogance is met by a subordinate recognizing authority. The forceful strike sends debris and blood flying, a direct consequence of his unmatched power. His sneer confirms his contempt as he steps forward through the lingering, bloody chaos. He recognized the technique, yet time was running short before the restricted area shifted again. Observing the fallen figures, Wu Chiang simply grunts in acknowledgement. He looked utterly pleased with himself, his unsettling grin widening. The opponent realizes the defensive style is insufficient against the White Horse Whip's sheer force. Despite the overwhelming power of the thunderous lightning, Wu Chiang recognized the true danger of this symbiotic technique. Even after deploying the powerful thunderous lightning, he still seemed unimpressed by the display. Seeing the powerful strike meet only air, the villain lets out a maniacal, triumphant laugh. His arrogance boiled over. My name is clearly irrelevant to this brutal clash. His opponent, reeling from the recognition, paused their assault to process the implication. The clash of techniques resulted in an explosive impact, leaving the opponent momentarily stunned by the sheer force. He mocks the defensive mastery Wu Chiang believes he possesses. The adversary knows too much about the profound earth and heaven technique. The failed defensive move resulted in a gruesome, tearing wound. He pressed the attack, questioning his opponent's focus during their deadly exchange. The powerful strike descended, carrying a palpable, murderous intent. The furious strike of thunderous lightning meets the defensive block with explosive force. Recognizing the explosive power of his opponent, he realizes fighting in close quarters is a fatal error. The clash of power unleashed a blinding impact, throwing the figure backward. The devastating strike of thundering lightning descended, an immense power challenging the defensive stance. The White Horse Whip proved stronger than his defense, forcing a shift in his desperate strategy. He advances, his casual approach mocking the confined space they fight in. His arrogant confidence erupted, dismissing the previous defensive technique as completely inadequate. The powerful, symbiotic technique slams down, trapping him completely. The overwhelming force of the thunderous lightning technique manifests around him. The sheer power behind the thunderous lightning technique enraged the opponent. The White Horse Whip strikes with devastating force, its power already exceeding the defensive limits. Despite its blocking capability, the defensive style lacks the raw power needed to shatter the White Horse Whip. The intense exchange hangs in the air as Wu Chiang prepares a shocking counter. The realization of his opponent's power hits hard, revealing a terrifying focus. His intense gaze tracked the lightning's fleeting power, recognizing its true, dangerous potential. The powerful strike connects, creating a blinding burst of energy against the defensive form. The destructive clash of techniques erupts in a blinding surge of power. His mocking confidence falters as he witnesses the sheer, overwhelming power unleashed. The thunderous lightning technique unleashed a blinding, concussive burst of power. Despite its defensive limits, a surge of newfound power erupted around him. The overwhelming, blinding force of the thunderous lightning technique slams down. A blinding surge of electrical energy erupted as he unleashed the technique. The thunderous lightning technique unleashed a terrifying, murderous power, now visibly striking. The sudden, intense surge of power leaves the opponent stunned, questioning the source of this overwhelming aura. Despite the debilitating power of the thunderous lightning technique, he grimly accepted the cost. The brief exertion leaves a trace of crimson on the blade and a heavy sigh from the victor. The thunderous lightning technique was too much to wield freely, yet he still had precious time to consider. Just as he was about to speak, a hand brutally clamped over his mouth, silencing him instantly. The devastating power of thunderous lightning left its mark, a painful reminder of the cost of such strength. Acknowledging the immense power of the technique, he realizes time is running out. The illusion of safety shattered. He realized time was running out before the sealed area shifted again. The opponent's final, desperate strike landed, a moment of jarring realization amidst the chaos. The opponent mocked his defensive style, but he was already preparing the true counter. The intensity of the impending technique settles, reflecting dread and realization in a stark, close-up gaze. The enemy's sudden appearance and his glowing red eyes send a clear signal of danger. A chilling presence, masked and menacing, stood across the blood-stained floor. Despite his best efforts, he failed to find even a slight opening against the true master. The masked figure stood impassively, bathed in the dim light of the entryway. Despite his best efforts, he could only retreat, never finding a true opening against the master. This agonizing defeat only sharpens his resolve to seek true mastery. Pengak lunges forward, his intent to cut down the demonic sect's seeds now clear. Even after fleeing, the lingering terror of that master's skill remained etched in his mind. Despite escaping, the realization struck hard. He hadn't created a single opening against that master. Even after fleeing with everything he had failed to create a single opening against that true master. Despite his desperate maneuver, the sheer power of the attack was overwhelming. The ominous, shadowed figure gazed down, its eyes glowing with malevolent red light. He lunged low, drawing his blade, meeting the looming shadow head-on. The realization of his opponent's deadly precision grips him, forcing absolute stillness. The master insists, forcing the disciple to realize the crucial flaw in her defense. Defeated but resolute, the disciple steels himself for whatever comes next. He screams in impotent fury, knowing his evasive maneuvers failed against true mastery. Despite all efforts to break the pattern, I failed to create an opening against that true master. The menacing figure acknowledges the exchange, drawing his sword with an air of supreme confidence. The master's supreme technique was a terrifying display of speed and precision, overwhelming all opposition instantly. Pengak plants his blade into the earth, readying himself for the inevitable clash. The demon sect assailant stares down, their face obscured by shadow and malice. Despite his unpredictable maneuvers, the master's strike was inescapable, forcing him into a desperate, near-ground evasion. Even as he attempted the unpredictable move, the speed of the strike remained overwhelming. The sheer power of the master's technique struck, leaving him reeling in shock and pain. The silent, masked figure reveals a menacing presence, planting their blade like a declaration of war. The desperate gamble failed. A blinding flash indicates the swift, fatal strike has landed. Defeated, his pride wounded, he could only reel from the master's overwhelming skill. Humbled by the master's skill, the protagonist reflects on their own futility, wondering if this new presence will stop their internal reckoning. The man standing near the steps emits a sharp, drawn-out sound, acknowledging the presence below. The shocking realization of his inferiority slammed into him. He was just a frog in a well, even in full retreat. The true measure of his opponent's skill hit him hard. Even after escaping, the lingering terror of that master's skill left him breathless under the blood-streaked twilight sky. Having failed to create an opening, he could only concede the true gap in their power. The memory of his grandfather's killer fuels a burning resolve to reach an even greater mastery. Having acknowledged the true master's level, a fierce resolve ignites within him. Defeated by the master's technique, he fled, only to find himself confronted by another imposing figure. The true master's skill left the protagonist utterly defeated. Realizing his own insignificance, he was a true master, leaving the protagonist feeling utterly inadequate. Like a frog in a well, the master attacker plants his blade, a silent challenge marking the end of the evasion. Realizing his own failure to create an opening, he resolves to match the master's aggression. The overwhelming power of the Peng clan master settles upon him like a heavy shroud. The true master's skill had left me humbled and running in fear. Despite the protagonist's desperate realization of being utterly outmatched, this opponent's chilling smile betrays an almost predatory satisfaction. The demon sex disciple unleashes his sword technique, ready to cut down the foe. The unexpected shift in his swordsmanship stunned the observer. What did the title, Seed of the Demonic Sect, truly imply? His true demonic nature erupts as he prepares to crush the perceived threat before him. Despite his desperate efforts to be unpredictable, the master's strike found its mark. As the realization of his defeat sinks in, the victor steadies his stance. Defeated by the master's superior timing, he felt a chilling, yet familiar, sensation return. The battle lines are drawn. The predicted movements meet with explosive force. The air crackles with the force of the incoming attack, his eyes wide with alarm, as he recognized the true mastery. His own desperate scramble felt pitifully inadequate. The reflection revealed an unexpected face, shattering his concentration with a sharp, silent, "What?" The grandfather instantly recognizes the catastrophic internal damage left by a legendary technique. The enraged demon unleashes a guttural roar, fueled by predatory intent. The Peng clan master continues to reveal the lethal characteristics of his technique. The internal power flows with every clash, disrupting the opponent's very foundation. The overwhelming skill of the master left him feeling utterly insignificant, a mere frog in a well. With newfound resolve, the demon sect cultivator prepares to launch their counterattack. Accepting the challenge, the mysterious swordsman declares he will now face his opponent properly, introducing himself as Pengak of Hebe. Pengak, filled with furious intent, declares his presence and intent to eliminate the seeds of the demonic sect. The master's strike comes down with blinding speed, forcing an absolute defense. The Peng clan master's shocking action leaves the onlookers utterly stunned. Despite the desperate attempt at unpredictable movement, the master's technique connects, forcing a reaction. But I must cast aside distractions. This strange suction force is a serious threat. Despite every effort to create an opening, the blow landed, sending him reeling in agony. Even after realizing his failure to create an opening, he grips his sword, determined. His desperate attempt to counter the master's timing had failed, but now a terrible realization dawned on him. The immense blade looms, pressing the advantage in the shadow of the forest. The absorption technique vanished, but the swordsman remained defiant. Despite the deadly poison, the fight continued, and the demon sword held an unsettling calm. This master is now analyzing the counter, describing the late strike technique in detail. The demon sword prepares, every fiber focused as the fight continues. Despite the quick maneuver, the opponent reacts to the sudden shift in momentum. The absorption technique vanished, but the true strength of the sword remained. The absorbing force vanished, but he didn't need it now. He unleashes his true, terrifying speed. The absorption technique is gone, forcing a direct confrontation with pure speed. He countered the absorption pull by placing the sword's trajectory perfectly against the force. The momentum shifts violently as the swords cross in a flash of intense, radiating energy. The demon sword fighter grits his teeth, unleashing a fierce yell as the blade descends. The blinding speed of the counterattack left his opponent stunned, questioning the impossible technique. The foe's astonishment confirms the success of the counter technique. The sheer shock of his defeat flashes in his eyes. His disbelief shattered as the counter was executed flawlessly, yet again. With the absorption technique neutralized, his speed must now rely purely on his own mastery. The demon sword executed the firestorm technique, an unexpected, mystical offensive. The energy dissipates, leaving only the sharp, vertical lines of incredible velocity. The demon sword user counters instantly, unleashing blinding white energy against the opponent's upward slash. The opponent screamed as the counterattack landed, his technique momentarily disrupted. Stunned by the sudden shift, he could only utter a single, sharp sound of disbelief. The demon sword's true power was unleashed, catching the Peng family member completely off guard. His counterattack, powered by the reversed absorption, was now frighteningly fast. The opponent charges forward, fueled by desperation, screaming his final attack. The demon sword fighter grimaced, realizing his trick had failed against this sturdy opponent. The opponent realizes his trump card has failed. Now, the true confrontation begins with a chilling declaration. The absorption vanished, forcing a direct confrontation with sheer speed and power. The devastating firestorm sword strike had landed, leaving the Peng family member reeling from the unexpected force. The raw power of the firestorm sword slams down, met only with grim, white-eyed focus. The opponent's absorption technique vanished, forcing him to rely on pure speed, which was already formidable. The demon sword endured the mystic profound sword technique, blood staining his determined face. The demon sword unleashes his ultimate technique, the mystic profound sword haul. First move, firestorm sword. The intense, crimson energy flared as the mystic profound sword technique was fully unleashed. The momentum shifts violently as he unleashes a torrent of fiery, profound sword energy. The sheer speed of the counterattack creates a violent shockwave, momentarily disrupting the opponent's posture. The reality of the situation sinks in, confirming the opponent's mastery over the white tiger palm's absorption technique. The ambush was successful, leaving the opponent visibly wounded and struggling for breath. The narrator details the incredible feat of turning a defensive posture into a lethal offensive maneuver. The opponent's technique vanished, but the true threat remained, forcing a shift in tactics. To counter that fatal mystic profound sword, I had to weather the full force of his attack. As the counterattack materialized, the opponent was forced into a defensive stance, his massive blade momentarily forgotten. Despite his near-fatal wound, the injured swordsman grips his blade, his wide eyes filled with shock and disbelief. That desperate move failed, but the demon sword only grins, welcoming the next exchange. The demon sword retreats, leaving the Peng family member behind, perhaps surprised by the sudden end. The poison needle struck home, forcing a brutal reckoning. Time was running out. The foe's confidence evaporated as the reversal was complete, leaving this warrior bleeding and cornered. The demonic beast reveals his identity, deeming the orthodox fighter's efforts a regrettable waste. Despite the injury and the overwhelming opponent, a grim smile flickers across his bloodied lips. The victor pronounces a cold, final word over the vanquished opponent. The powerful impact of the firestorm sword ripped through the air, staining the world in furious crimson. The brutal exchange ends, leaving the mountain peaks shrouded in a turbulent, dark atmosphere. The brief distraction of the enemy's failed ambush provided the opening he needed. Even without the pulling force, the counterattack was swift, driving the opponent back. The demon sword user stands firm, their counterattack a sudden, terrifying realization of concealed power. The sudden, brutal grip slammed down, confirming the ambush had landed. The demon's sword is disarmed, striking the ground with a sharp clang. The poison needle struck, and a wave of dread washed over him as the deadline approached. The victor stood tall, his massive presence dominating the stunned landscape. The demon sword's reputation cemented. Despite that dazzling counter, the ambush had landed, poisoning him with a fatal needle. The demonic beast's laughter rings out as the ambush is sprung, surrounding the protagonist. The sudden shock of being hit by organized, memorized techniques and poison infuriated him. The standoff resolves as the opponent appears, ready to meet the challenge head-on. The demon sword acknowledged the unexpected brilliance of the counter. The Peng family member's facade drops, revealing chilling composure after delivering the final blow. Even after dismissing his counter, the assailants rush in, clearly underestimating the demon sword's readiness. The young disciple was now fully engaged, drawing a sword strike that felt impossibly fast. He unleashes the full fury of the firestorm sword technique, a devastating counterattack. The unexpected counter strike lands, driving the demon sword user back with a sharp, agonizing impact. The demon sword's final taunt fades as a fresh danger closes in. The final exchange concluded, but the true threat revealed itself as his ambushers descended. "You underestimated the demon sword," he sneered, confirming his hidden awareness. Despite his counter, the sting of the poison needle brought a grunt of pain. Ambushed in the gloom, the poison takes hold with deadly swiftness. The mystic profound sword technique unleashed a blinding flash, shocking the observers. The bewildered onlookers could only register utter shock at the unexpected turn of events. The demon sword's eyes widened with an unnerving, almost void-like intensity. The distraction deployed, a decision was made. Time to strike at everyone simultaneously. The sudden explosion of activity engulfed the clearing as the confrontation erupted into brutal, close-quarters combat. The sudden appearance of the boundary sent a wave of dread through the fighter. The swift execution left the opponents scattered, motionless, confirming the chilling efficiency of the lone figure. The deal was rejected, and the air hung thick with the young man's resignation over his impending death. The desperate plea for alliance meets the cold, sharp reality of a halted blade. The sudden, brutal grip stole the air, confirming this confrontation was about to turn deadly. The proposal was delivered with desperate sincerity, yet the recipient remained skeptical, clutching the vital antidote. The protagonist paused, witnessing the sudden, desperate plea from the man they had nearly incapacitated. The realization hits hard, anger twisting his features into a snarl as he recognizes the deception. The potential ally paused, realizing the gravity of the sudden environmental shift. Despite the apparent reprieve, the immediate threat of the spreading poison still weighed heavily on him. The shock of betrayal hit him as the poison took hold, his breath catching in a desperate gasp. The tension hung heavy. Even after the revelation, an unsettling silence remained between them. The injured man desperately reached out, his pleas for aid overshadowed by the sudden appearance of a new danger. The smoke, meant to be an antidote, was a cunning distraction, and the ambush was sprung. The desperate plea for survival hung in the air, met only with a terrifying poisoned gaze. Analyzing his character, I sense a proud independence, yet a surprising lack of malice toward me. The explosion of smoke and debris violently obscured their sightlines, a calculated distraction. The desperate plea hangs in the air. Fight together against everyone else. No turning back now. Despite the poisoned state, the cold, determined eyes still held a chilling resolve. He clutched the small gourd, the antidote he just offered. The promised antidote soared between them, a final desperate gambit to change allegiance. The desperate offer was met with cold skepticism, but the victim clutched the gourd tighter, eyes wild with immediate danger. The moment of attempted treatment was abruptly interrupted by the enemy's swift, malicious strike. The momentary truce shatters as the true intent of their opponent flares into focus. The initial shock gives way to a tense, drawn-out silence between the two figures. The smoke was a perfect diversion, but now they were exposed to the open ground. The moment of decision hangs heavy as the master of Beastao, Buon Ciel, stands ready with Siojina. The silent standoff shattered as the newcomers roared, realizing the deception. A fierce, determined expression solidified, recognizing the gravity of the situation. The two powerful figures stand united, watching the unfolding chaos with detached certainty. His knowing smirk suggested the supposed antidote was merely a prelude to a much grander deception. Frustrated by their hesitation, he mocks the remaining trainees, ready to strike them both down now. The immediate shock of recognition washes over them as their opponents are clearly identified. The conspirators, now revealed, share a chilling, triumphant expression over their deception. The pair stood ready, their combined presence a clear challenge to the chaos unfolding around them. The tension peaked as the rivals' glaring, red-tinged eye met the other's wary gaze. Despite the injury and pleading, his cold, calculating eyes remained fixed on the prize. The deceiver unleashes his true power, shouting his intent to scatter the others. The sudden deployment of purple smoke erupts, causing immediate disorientation and shock among the remaining fighters. The truth of the trick slammed into them as the poisoned air filled their lungs. The sound of steel meeting air punctuated the sudden, chaotic clash. The villain's twisted satisfaction was immediately interrupted as the potential ally pleaded for a reprieve. As the dust settled from the initial confrontation, the central figure revealed his true colors, drawing a reaction of shock and defense from the observing trainees. The immediate realization of the trick sent the deceived sect members into a frenzy, demanding immediate capture. With the immediate threat of the soul fiends looming, the stakes had been raised yet again. The smoke bombs deploy, turning the open space into a perfect cover for an immediate retreat. The planner has already zeroed in on the perfect terrain, a cave with a narrow entrance and long internal passages. The realization of their trick sent a shockwave through the remaining rivals. The chase explodes into motion, the air vibrating with their sudden, desperate speed. Their pursuers vanish into the background as they flee, the urgency of escape etched in their desperate stride. The ensuing chaos forced an immediate, dramatic confrontation from a high vantage point. The forced retreat culminates at the rugged base of the mountains. The chaotic smoke cleared just enough for their destination to be revealed. The sudden, menacing purple energy crackled, cutting through the tense silence as the protagonist could only manage a single, bewildered question. The potential ally's desperate plea for survival hangs in the air, but an unseen shift registers on the assassin's face. Something feels profoundly off. A powerful, dark aura with vivid purple energy erupts around the shadowed figures. The sudden, ominous appearance of soul fiends confirmed their worst fears. They were trapped in another restricted zone. Despite the ominous energy swirling around them, a grim resolve hardened their features. The ensuing chaos was immediate, marked by an explosive sound wave of dark energy. With the restricted zone looming behind them, fighting here was their only option. The shocking revelation caused an immediate, visceral reaction. The moment of decision hangs heavy as the combatant prepares their final, decisive move. The two figures stood poised, one readying their sword, the other extending a hand, a silent confrontation hanging in the air. The momentary confusion over their coordinated attack was instantly replaced by action. The tension breaks as the two swordsmen present their blades, ready to face the assembled group. The air crackles with menacing purple energy as more shadowy figures emerge, closing the trap. The smoke-filled air provided the perfect cover for his escape. The intense confrontation culminates as they commit to a decisive, final strike. The momentary truce shatters as combat erupts in blinding speed. The elder's eyes burned with sudden, fiery realization. This opponent's skill was too profound to ignore. The devastating sword art overwhelmed the opponent, creating a vortex of dark energy. The elder's deadly blades burst outward, a chaotic swarm of razor-sharp intent. The unexpected surge of power from Yunsel forces the elder back, unleashing a blade technique born of pure instinct. Fueled by absolute refusal, the counter-strike ignited with blinding, focused energy. The elder's sword art manifested as a blinding, inescapable arc of energy. Even as the sword art manifests with blinding force, the combatant surged forward, wholly committed to the deadly exchange. With a final, desperate surge, he unleashed a blade of pure, searing light. Yunxiao's eyes snapped open, wide with shock and disbelief at the incoming technique. A blinding flash of purple energy erupts as the sword strikes with unimaginable force. The fierce energy of the counterattack explodes outward. The shocking sword art unleashed by Senior Sao elicited a powerful, resonating impact. Behind him, a comrade stands ready, but the focus snaps back to the charged warrior. The battlefield became a canvas of carnage as the elder's technique swept through the remaining combatants. The elder's formidable sword art, born from raw instinct, was now being gripped tightly. With a final, bloody grip, the sword was raised, refusing to accept defeat. The defeated warrior gasped, his resolve crumbling as he faced an impossible technique. The challenger's eyes widened, still processing the terrifying, unorthodox sword technique displayed. The elder offered a gesture of acceptance, his weary eyes meeting the gaze of his opponent. A deafening roar of immense pressure burst forth, mirroring the terrifying light in the awakened eye. The challengers close in, their dark forms shimmering with lethal intent. The devastating arc of the elder's sword technique sliced through the air, overwhelming his opponents instantly. The master's technique was brutally efficient, striking two foes simultaneously in a flash of cold steel and crimson spray. The elder's words ignited a primal surge, shattering any thought of defeat. The sound of the attack echoes as the first strike lands amidst the chaos. Stunned by the sheer power unleashed, the opponent could only scream his disbelief. Ignoring the first challenger, the other opponent lunged with blinding, aggressive momentum. The elder's sword art demands a deeper connection. Merge your very perception. As the command echoes, a stark white boot presses down, marking the next decisive move. His feral grin promised chaos, as he pointed with menacing certainty. The clash erupts, a blinding burst of energy silencing all doubt. As the bodies fell around him, his hand instinctively tightened on the hilt, readying the next, devastating strike. The shocking power of the elder's sword art was too much, yet the beast's red eyes flared with undeterred intent. The initial strikes overwhelmed the defenders, leaving bodies scattered in the wake of the elder's formidable sword art. His breath hitched, witnessing the impossible speed of this unknown sword art. The sinister grin confirms the opponent's confidence as the clash of blades erupts in brilliant, blinding light. The desperate fighter's shock meets the victor's menacing glint, a clash of wills captured in a single, frozen moment. A sudden, shocking burst of energy erupts from his determined stance. A blinding flash of purple energy erupted as the summoned blade struck home. The senior's powerful strike, manifesting as blinding purple energy, erupts outward. The elder's overwhelming sword art manifests as a blinding, spiraling torrent of energy. The confident challenger moved in, his chilling smirk confirming his intent to finish this fight now. A desperate refusal screams from deep within as the world threatens to collapse around him. A chilling sound rings out as despair nearly consumes him, only to be violently pushed back. The onlookers react with alarm, recognizing the dangerous territory being breached. Drenched in defeat, the warrior collapses, momentarily overwhelmed by the sheer pressure of the final moments. The victor's voice broke through the haze of defeat, demanding that Yunsel rise. A chilling shadow rises, eyes burning with malevolent, crimson intent, ready to strike. The commanding sword strike, born of instinct, cuts through the overwhelming purple energy. The overwhelming surge of power reflected in his widening eye signaled an imminent shift. A sinister purple aura erupts as the figure readies a blinding strike. This final, intense summon signals the arrival of the awaited envoys. The deafening sound of the signal blast echoed through the complex. The chief instructor's face contorted in raw, desperate command, echoing his defiance. The masked envoy and the imposing warrior finally arrived, their presence casting a menacing shadow over the kneeling survivor. He blinked, the haze lifting slightly, realizing the immense time he had lost while unconscious. His grim, calculating gaze remained fixed as the weight of the decision settled upon him. The shock of the revelation registered in his wide, tormented eye. The air shatters with the force of an impact as the chief instructor's intervention ends the contest. The intense realization hits the subordinate as the chief instructor's drastic decision is revealed. Even facing certain punishment, he remained resolved, accepting the consequences for his radical decision. The chief instructor's keen eye finally locked onto the diamond in the rough. The elder of the demon palace, Wimyung, confronts the chief instructor about the shockingly premature end to the selection. The final, unbelievable truth hangs heavy in the silence between them. The elder leans in, an almost predatory satisfaction in his knowing gaze. He accepted the consequences, resolute in his difficult decision. The elder's defiant gaze confirms his decision is final, regardless of the 10 demon paths' reaction. The summons had been made, and now the envoys from the 10 demon paths were arriving, signaled by the piercing calls of passing birds above the eaves. 4 days had passed in the blink of an eye. He finally awoke from his critical slumber. The confusion deepens as the gravity of the chief instructor's sudden intervention washes over him. The realization of his survival, and the mystery behind it, jolted Jinha back to awareness. The mad doctor had miraculously stabilized him, healing injuries that should have been fatal. The narrative shifts abruptly as a new, ominous figure appears. The physician from Demon Palace. Emerging from the room, he surveyed the grand, quiet hallway of the second hall. The grateful survivor offered sincere thanks, but the protagonist remained bewildered by the sudden intervention. The sound of footsteps echoed as the two figures descended the grand, ornate staircase. The lingering dust motes catch the light, marking the moment they are ushered into the secluded central area of the second hall. Through the window, the compound lay veiled in a soft, gentle rain. The survivor, still processing the improbable rescue, looks up at his cheerful benefactor. The weight of the mystery settled upon him, his expression mirroring the unsettling lack of connection to the instructor's sacrifice. The survivor was finally offered comfort after his long ordeal, a moment of shared respite. Jingha processed the startling information, his expression reserved as he absorbed the weight of his narrow escape. The man calmly held up 2 fingers, perhaps confirming the number of remaining survivors. The simple order was placed: 2 bowls of noodles to share. The memory of this warm guidance, perhaps from a figure like his long-lost grandfather, resurfaces as he eats. The others waited silently as the now healed disciple ate quietly in the central area of the second hall. The young man presents the freshly prepared bowl of noodles with a wide, almost unsettling grin. Amidst the quiet dining area, the recipient of the favor waited patiently for answers. The realization of his sudden recovery and the mysterious events surrounding it finally dawned on him. His shock intensified, realizing he was utterly unaware of the chief instructor's drastic decision. The gravity of the entire situation finally settles in, leaving her face stark and unnerved. The other man, stunned by the revelation of the chief instructor's actions, could only process the magnitude of the favor bestowed upon Jinha. He casually displayed a peace sign, perhaps unaware of the seriousness of the situation he narrowly escaped. The simple offering of food arrives, bringing a moment of normalcy to their strange situation. The sheer weight of that revelation made the comrade's shock visible. The surprised youth watched Jinha, seemingly oblivious to the heavy weight of gratitude being offered. The weight of this strange devotion settled heavily upon him. The weight of these unanswered questions settled heavily upon his narrowed gaze. "You ordered 2 bowls, Jinha. What is it?" He seemed genuinely pleased with the simple meal. Tragic past surfaces. The legendary physician's descent into madness after failing to save his beloved. The sudden, blinding lights signaled a dramatic shift in the proceedings. The confusion continued to cloud his expression as he processed the incredible timeline of his recovery. His focused expression betrayed the lingering confusion over the chief instructor's drastic choice. Despite the seriousness of his situation, his immediate thought drifted back to the simple comfort of the ordered meal. The realization of how indebted he was hit him with fresh shock. 2 bowls of simple noodles arrive, a gesture of thanks for saving his life. The sudden revelation of the chief instructor's sacrifice leaves Jinha stunned and silent. The simple act of eating, a shared moment over 2 bowls of noodles. The recipient, still processing the shocking revelation of his rescue, simply closes his eyes. The recipient of the favor paused, chopsticks poised, processing the shocking revelation. The confusion deepens. The chief instructor's actions defy all logic. The heavy clang of the grand bell signals the end of all suspense. The young woman pauses, holding her chopsticks, clearly surprised by the revelation. The urgency in the elder's eyes was palpable as the call for the mad doctor echoed. The signal has been given, and the commanding figures finally appear before them. The grim invitation from Hellblood Castle concluded, and now all eyes turned toward the final stage. With the previous offers accepted, the attention shifts to the remaining hopefuls. The crowd watched, waiting for Weihyogun to make his fateful choice before the sword demon. With the others in tow, the Vice Lord steps forward, his presence commanding the silent space. The tension was palpable as Bu Yunsul stared down the sword demon, sweat beading from the sheer pressure. Despite the crowd, the air hung heavy with an unnatural, absolute silence. The Vice Lord stands before the chosen, holding aloft the symbolic spear, awaiting the next decision. Jekyahan, Vice Lord of Hellblood Castle, presented his stark proposal with unnerving calm. The Vice Lord's imposing finger settles the selection, singling out one of the black-clad figures. The Master's sharp gaze pierced through the tension, waiting for the final declaration. The sword demon's gaze felt heavy, making everyone in the hall intensely nervous. Weihyogun's shocking declaration left the onlookers stunned and bewildered. The Vice Lord, Jekyahan, gestured as he presented the Death Command Gate's offer. Yang Manhwa stepped forward, feeling the weight of the Death Command Gate's decree as the Vice Lord waited. His pointed finger affirmed the stark assessment. Yang Manhwa's innate talent lay beyond the sword. Cornered by the Vice Lord's unsettling appraisal, the young man stammers his reluctant agreement. Jekyahan reveals himself, a Vice Lord from the notorious Hellblood Castle. The terrifying title of the next leader is announced to the anxious crowd. Jekyahan, the 10,000 Poison Venerable, points decisively toward the next candidate. His decision made, he prepared to face the sword demon, drawing his blade in defiance. The sword prodigy felt the jarring shift from renowned swordsman to potential poisoner. The 10,000 poison venerable reveals a chilling truth about the candidate's dark past. The Vice Lord finishes listing the dark deeds, exposing her ruthless ambition. The venerable Jekyahan paused, his imposing presence unnerving the expectant crowd. The venerable master confirms his ruthless nature aligns perfectly with the poison arts. The air crackled as Wihayojayam, the sword demon, stood before the assembly. The sword demon, facing down potential death, draws his blade against the crowd. If that is his decision, then there is no turning back now. The Vice Lord of Hellblood Castle, Jekyahan, observes the aspirant with unsettling intensity. The sword demon's sinister smile confirmed the unbearable tension in the air. Wihyogung's shocking rejection silenced the room, turning all attention to his next move. The imposing figure of Jekyahan steps forward, radiating silent, powerful authority. The mighty Wihyogun, the demon sword of the Flame Rain clan, now stands revealed. The tension shatters as the sword demon's spirit flares, erupting in a raw, agonizing cry. The candidates watched, stunned, as Wihyogun was revealed. All eyes were fixed on Wihyogung, the sword demon, waiting for his decision. A flicker of defiance crossed his face as he prepared his next declaration. Bu Yunsul stood resolute, facing the overwhelming presence of Wihyogun, the demon sword. The sword demon's declaration hung heavy, leaving an elder reeling in disbelief. The imposing Vice Lord Jekyahan now stood before the candidates. The sword demon's stare was fixed, waiting to see where Bu Yunsial's bold rejection would lead. Stunned by the sudden praise, Bu Yunsul could only stare blankly ahead. The sword demon's shocking declaration hung heavy in the stunned silence. The sword demon's fury exploded, shattering the silence with a menacing challenge to Bu Yunsial's decision. The sword demon's sheer aura boiled over, causing the challenger to finally let out a guttural roar of exertion. His simmering resentment finally boiled over, manifesting in a terrifying, sudden draw of the blade. Rejecting the prestigious Flame Rain Sword clan's offer felt like an impossible act, yet he had done it. The sword demon's glare cuts through the tension, his expression unwavering amidst the sudden draw of the blade. The Flame Rain Sword clan's master reels back, utterly stunned by the unthinkable rejection. The master of the Flame Rain Sword clan recoils at the shocking rejection. The overwhelming pressure of his demonic aura was enough to crush the body. The demon sword unleashes raw power, his imposing figure dominating the blood-red atmosphere as someone stares up in shock. The crowd erupted in shock as Bu Yunsul dared to draw his weapon against the sword demon. Wihyogun, the sword demon, erupts in blinding, furious energy as his offer is scorned. The imposing figure unleashes a torrent of crimson energy, enraged that a mere Vice Hall Lord dared to intervene. The sword demon's hand tightens around his hilt, a palpable aura of restrained fury erupting around him. The audacity of drawing a blade against the sword demon struck the onlookers silent, realizing the potential for utter carnage. Wihyogun's declaration hung heavy, shattering the respectful silence. The sword demon's rage ignites, challenging Bu Yunsial's perceived safety net. The tension escalates as an elder realizes the sword demon's unstable state endangers everyone nearby. The shocking decision hung heavy in the air, immediately escalating the tension. The tension snaps as Bu Yunsul finally draws his blade against the sword demon. Wihyogun's smug, confident smile seemed to mock the gravity of the situation. Seeing the tense atmosphere escalate, Jekyahan calmly calls an end to the immediate confrontation.